Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the interview. You already see him on screen. Applause, even if you can't, even if you can't hear it, to Bernd. Welcome on board, Bernd. Thank you very much for being here, Bernd Lehan. If you could say a few words about yourself, who are you? What are you doing? And why are you here?
Originally, I was a programmer and started really as one of the programmers of the X games, like in the 90s when we started working on X Beyond the Frontier. By now, I'm unfortunately not really programming anymore since a couple of years already. So I'm just busy with leading the company and leading on. Well, leading is a bit big word because it's more like a democratic thing here in the company that we all work on the design, but I'm still in charge a little bit of the design of the game as well.
Your game X4 Foundation is around the market for quite some time now. 2018 you started working on it. How's the journey so far?
Great, really much better than we ever expected. Seriously, the game, as you say, came out in 2018, and it's really been wonderful for us how it was perceived, but also how it grew over the years. We have released now what we are talking about today, the fourth expansion to it already. But so there were three already since I think 2020, 21, 22. So that's the only year without an expansion was 2019. And every time we released an expansion, we also released a major update. So the game grew, and every time people bought new games, the fan base grew. It's received well. So yeah, it's going really good.
Great. Fantastic. You are right now working on a few things at the same time. One of it is patch 6.0. The other one is a new DLC called Kingdom End. And we are going to focus a little bit at first on patch 6.0, if you don't mind. And maybe you can elaborate a little bit on what the content is of the free update in the end. And can you explain a little bit the difference between what you put into the DLC and what you put into an update?
Yeah, sure. The strategy is basically unchanged for many years. We've already done this with X3 that we usually try to improve the game, the base features and the engine of the game with free updates that everybody gets, even when we have to also release an expansion that costs money. So with X4, we've done this really every time one of those three major expansions so far, and now the fourth one came out, that at the same time there was a major update. So it's not just a patch, because patch always sounds a little bit small. It's really a lot more. And now with 6.0, this is probably more true than ever, because we actually worked at a lot also on the foundation of the game engine, which is, I guess, quite unusual that you really go so deep in the tech while the game is running, maintaining safe game compatibility and maintaining the features. So that's also why this is a big deal for us. That a big beta also that requires a bit more testing than normal, and a lot of under the hood work, as well as new game features that will soon be released for everybody and are currently in beta testing.
New features that are still coming. We saw a few of them already in patch 6.0. We're in beta 4 at the moment. There are a few features that are new, but there are more coming, you say?
Well, there is always work on those features. Like a good example is this new camera mode, the live stream, which is it's a cool feature to allow people to kind of view live their entire universe, and also later, if they have the right reputation, also the universe of their allies. And we are working a lot on the presentation of that, and what exactly you can see, how it is presented, the camera movements, and so on. that's just one example, but all of the features are still being worked on, essentially.
Okay, one big thing, you talked about this on other interviews already, is the so-called X-Tech 5. I'm very interested in what is an X-Tech 5? Oh, you said physics and graphics, but what is in there?
Yeah, it's for us, it's just the name of the engine that we work with, and since it's usually a fluent development, you always work on little things under the hood, and you don't really bump up the number for little things. But this is a major step, and we've done a couple of really radical improvements. Best example for that is the physics engine, indeed, where we completely replaced the physics engine that X4 was using since its release with a completely new one, Jolt, and that is it's allows us a lot of new or improved collision detection. That's the biggest improvement that this brings. It's also it has lots of little consequences, but it meant that we had to integrate this into the engine, but it's also went a lot of work into adapting the graphic assets to it. It's basically if it works perfect, and it seems to work very good already, making it impossible to get into the geometry of any solid object, any ship or station, because it now knows about what is inside and what is outside, and that's basically always a big problem with physics engines, that you whenever you have a wall, essentially don't know. Sometimes you can get through, and especially with the high speeds and velocities of spaceships and the complicated geometry around stations, especially in docks. That's always a big problem. It was a big problem with the old physics engine, and I think this is really greatly improved now. It also improves performance and so on. And there's also the graphics engine. I guess maybe you have questions on that as well, but that's another thing where we did some pretty big improvements, and all of that together, and there's more, but all of that together we call X-Tech 5, because it's basically the fifth major iteration since we work on X games at all for a long time.
Very good. I would really like to know how you implement physics and graphics into a running game. Did you have to remodel something? Was it just like you could take the assets that you already had in your game and just like adapt it to the new engines?
Yeah, it had to be adapted, indeed. I mean, we when we started with this, we experimented first with trying to use as much the original assets as possible. What we found out is there were a couple of problems that kind of forced us to re-export the physics meshes for almost all ships, and so this is it was more work than we originally anticipated, but I think that paid off. This is there are all kinds of special cases, like for example, when you leave one of your ships with a space suit, there's always the door of your ship, so to say, and also the docks. So every interior inside a ship or a station that you can fly into, in the case with this of your S ship, this would be with the spacesuit only, but also on bigger ships and later on stations. All of this is especially critical, but as I said, you need to basically teach this physics engine precisely what is a solid object, and for that we needed to export a lot of new meshes. So that was also part of the work, but it's essentially a lot of programming and trying to do all of this while maintaining the core of the games. In some cases, this new physics engine also has consequences for the behavior, like for example how ships move after a collision, how the collision really affects the path of a ship. opening logboxes was, for example, something that we were just playing around with last week again, because there were some unforeseen different behaviors now. But basically this goes on throughout all activities in the game. You really have to test it quite thoroughly again.
Yeah, we just saw it about an hour ago with wreckages and asteroids, like stuff that you maybe not think in the first place. But yeah, these are also behaving to being pushed, for example, right?
Mm. Yeah, that's maybe I read already in our internal chat that you had a bug there, and this physics engine has consequences on all areas, and indeed how the forces are being calculated and how they translate then to movements is completely different now in with this new physics engine. I think in general it is much better than it was before, but of course this can lead to new bugs. So that's why we have to test, and that's why the 6.0 beta will probably take a little longer than the other major patches that we did in the past.
Sure, sure. One more thing because I'm really interested in the Jolt physics engine. This is a fantastic step forward, and for people that maybe don't aware which kind of big step this is, Jolt physics engine was, for example, used in the new. Now I forgot the game. Horizon Forbidden West, the latest game, the latest Horizon game. Why did you decide exactly on that engine? Do you have some in-house experts or?
Oh, of course, we have a physics expert, one programmer here who is very specialized in this area. But we evaluated this, and it has a lot of things that speak for it. One is, of course, that it was already tested in a big game and proved that it can work in such a large world. It's, of course, I mean, I can go a little bit deeper on that.
Please,
You
yeah.
know that we as a company are a little bit unusual in this industry in that we have our own engine for everything. Most big games nowadays are made with the big finished engines like Unreal and Unity, and this is not because we want to be special or we want to be different. It would be great if we could use one of those finished engines from the get-go. But whenever we evaluated them, they were not perfect for what we wanted to do because our game is so unusual. It's a bit different from most standard, most established big titles. I mean, especially Unreal is, of course, very successful with first-person shooters, but also a very wide range of games already. But yeah, we always struggle to use one of those big technologies and simply use it for our game. So what we did when we last evaluated all kinds of technologies that we could potentially get from the outside to make our development a little bit easier, we tried out all kinds of specialized solutions for little things. The physics engine is one such example. We also had tools for user interface. We had tools for particle systems, and all of this makes development quite complicated because you have to integrate it into your own engine, and these pieces of a puzzle are not really designed to work together. So we have to essentially develop our own engine really from scratch. And sometimes when you depend on these external companies that develop such a technology, in the worst case, it can happen that these companies disappear because sometimes they go bankrupt, sometimes they get bought up by competitors, and then the technology is not available anymore. So this is something that has happened to us in the past several times, and so we got burned on this a little bit badly, and that's why I think most people in our team are big fans of open source, and this is the case with Jolt. It's an open source technology that is really a big pro as well.
Yeah, I found it on GitHub, and I found the information on GitHub. That was very interesting. One other thing about the graphics engine, we saw already the implementation in shadows and in lighting. Will we see the mapping? I forgot the name of it.
Parallax occlusion mapping, yeah.
Thank you very much. Exactly.
I was just writing it down for me because I also get confused with all of the abbreviations, especially POM. We always just say POM, and then I don't know exactly anymore what it means. Yeah.
Is this all the graphics engine is capable of, or is there more hidden that you can dig out in the future?
Oh, there are deeper changes. I think in the release notes we try to wrap it together as improvements in lighting, and that sounds small, but it's a big deal because lighting is essentially everything that a 3D engine does. And what we really tried to achieve was to be able to have more intensive sunlight and harder shadows and stronger reflections, which all makes space scenes more realistic, but which caused us problems in the past whenever we tried it. So like reflections can start to flicker very badly. Sometimes the main feature that we lacked was also reflections in interiors like cockpits, and there was no, I'm also again struggling with abbreviations. The specular screen space reflections, they were introduced, I think, with 5.0 or 4.0 already, which are great, but they are only part of the perfect solution of reflection. So what we introduced now with 6.0 are basically environment probes, which is just a tool for us to correctly and without too much waste on performance update reflections in interiors on a frequent basis. So yeah, all of this has to work together. The shadows were improved, and that also makes a big difference, both in interiors, but also when you look at stations from a distance, that we are able to render them in a bigger distance. Lots of little things that all have to work together to improve the result, the lighting of the whole game.
Small keyword. Are you looking into ray traced lightning? I don't say ray tracing, but ray traced lighting.
Yes, we evaluate that as well. It's interesting. It's of course quite expensive, and I don't believe in buzzwords. There's a lot of games that have these hype buzzwords, and then you really don't see the result necessarily. It just says, yeah, now we have this feature. But yeah, it has a lot of potential there undoubtedly. But you can do very different things with ray tracing, and these new graphic cards that support it are of course very powerful. And so there are some cool things that we think about for the future. But I think for us at the moment, the things that I was just describing were giving us more results, were giving us more important results. And but yeah, this is not necessarily the end of it. So yeah, maybe in the future we do more.
So we like the results that we can get our hands on immediately. That's the best one. And speaking about getting our hands on, before we go into DLC talk, I have one more very important thing. I know a lot of people are interested in it. Mod tools. Because you said something about giving modders more tools to work with. I don't know where you said it, but it's somewhere remembered. What's the current
Yes.
status of that, and how do you see modders as a part of X4's lifespan?
Oh, they are definitely an important part. I mean, in general, you know that we want to work with the community as closely as possible. This is everybody who is on any of the forums, not just the Egosoft forum, but also the Reddit and social media and so on. And modders are, of course, a big cornerstone for that. They show us also what the community wants, and because when it's a very easy metric to just look how many times were certain mods installed, sometimes it gives us an idea of what we want to change about the game so that we can make something that is currently only available as a mod an integral part of the game. But it's of course there are also those really cool big mods that completely change the universe, which is like the other extreme. And we want to support this as much as possible because of course it's a win-win. Customers get more content, get cooler content, and we get more customers in the best case. So yeah, that's of course good for us. The thing with the tools is that we always wanted to make all documentation, especially so that modders can know how to modify files, how to change things in the game. We always wanted to improve our documentation, but what stood a little bit in the way in the past was quite often the 3D software that we used, because in the past our pipeline was mostly based on 3ds Max, which is pretty expensive, cost-intensive commercial software. And already for many years now, we were in a transition over to a new pipeline, which is completely based on Blender. And this is still not 100% finished, but almost. And with this, we hope that we will then also be able to release the tools that we use internally to modders, so that because Blender, as you might know, is open source as well. And again, I'm a big fan of open source software, and this will allow modders to directly work with 3D meshes, potentially export them directly into the game, or take meshes and modify them. And so there's exporter tools necessary for that. And yeah, we are preparing a package of this kind of stuff to give it out to people together, hopefully with the release of 6.0.
Together with also the physics that are then enabled, right?
Yeah, that's part of it. You basically are able then to also generate the physics meshes that I was talking about. This is part of this exporter, that for every mesh you put into the game, you also generate LODs. That's a graphical process to make basically the smaller versions of ships, for example, that you can basically in order to save performance when you are rendering them in a bigger distance. And physics meshes, which is another thing. Usually this kind of stuff is done automatically.
Perfect. This is very good news for modders, I hope, out there. And a lot of hopefully interesting ideas will spark from that. That would be great. So, and now I want to show the people a little bit of visuals from your new DLC. There we have it already on screen. Nice. Kingdom End.
Mm-hmm.
Borons are back. Can you imagine why Borons are so popular?
Oh, of course. They are nice creatures, right? The Borons are very sympathetic race in the universe. They always were a little more peaceful than the others, and also very technologically advanced. Also, they are the most unusual visually because they have this sea creature vibe to them, which is very unusual. Not human, but friendly, technologically advanced. Good ships and weapons in the past. So of course they have a lot of fans, and we knew that, and we were always working on it. But they, for all of those reasons, they are also harder to get into the game. That's why it took us a little longer to work on this expansion than on the others.
That's my next question. Why did it took so long to implement them? Did you have that plan already? But
Yeah.
I know we were sitting here 2 years ago. It's already 2 years ago, and I asked you about Borns, and you smiled. Did you already? Did you already had that idea in mind that you were changing the game this direction you did, and you're waiting until that point to finally bring glory to the Boron Empire?
No, of course we wanted to make the universe complete, so to speak. We would have loved to have all of it in the game right from the start. It's just the immense mass. It's not as easy anymore as it used to be with X3 or X2 when it was just so much easier to make assets, right? I mean, it's so many factors. You didn't have interiors. A ship didn't have a sophisticated cockpit. We didn't even render any characters other than these little videos that you saw. And now all of this makes development of graphical assets, but also the whole game so much more complicated and time intensive and labor intensive. So we just were not able to make everything faster than we did. And the Borons are indeed especially complicated in this regard because they are very different in every regard. The ships are very different. They have this very specific organic surface texture. They look and feel and behave very different from the other races. And the characters are very different. You have to think how do they move around in an air-filled ship? How do you render the character? We have now these pods that they are in. How do you make that compatible when you hire a Boron as a pilot? How can you put another pilot on a Boron ship? How do those seats in the cockpit work? So there's a lot of little technical details, and it was harder than the other expansions, but we of course always wanted to make the full universe, the community of planets, and bring it back to the X universe. That's also why this year we really want to focus on a little bit relaunching X4 as the complete thing now that you have the whole community of planets being back. And people, maybe there are some people that are still playing X3 or waited until now to really have the full experience with all of the big races in the game.
I have to be a little bit critical about that because in 2018 you already released something like an art book, and we already saw these pods for Borons. Was there any other difficulty that hindered you before now?
Yeah, it's not just an idea that helps you. Of course, there are concepts. It's easy to write a cool concept and say, "Hey, look, this is how we are going to do it." We played around with the work goes in the technical implementation and in the 3D meshes and the assets that you need. And just making a couple of concepts is unfortunately only the smallest part of the work. And again, when we were talking, I think when you say 2 years ago, that was probably with Cradle of Humanity, the Terran DLC. At that time, we had lots of ideas still how we deal with the water-filled ships and what to do, and we were not sure about it. So we tried out, we did experiments, and all of this takes time, unfortunately.
Water filled, but they are actually flying their own ships in their suits. Does that mean we will be able to also get into their ships as an Argon or as a Paranid?
Yes. They have all air-filled cockpits as well, because otherwise it would be. That's one of the things we discussed a lot. Could there be some ships that are only water-filled? So if you have a game start where you are a Boron from the start, that you could fly this, but that wouldn't make sense. So no, we opted for a method where basically all of the ships are compatible to all of the races. So also to allow you to play most of the important content, and that's of course mostly the ships, from all perspectives. And you have so many game starts to choose from by now. And that also means different characters that you play.
And I was especially told right now I should especially ask the question, and this will be for everyone in chat and at home. This is something exclusive that we're going to hear, I hope. So Greg said to me, okay, Greg, who you called out, sorry. Is the Boron equipment, especially the equipment, weapons and engines and so on, is it compatible with other ships, or are they unique? Do you have something to tell us about that, right?
Yeah, they are unique. They are not compatible. That's I think similar to what you see on the with the Terrans to a somewhat smaller degree. But in the case of the Boron, it's especially important because of the visuals. If you see this in the video, you can actually already deduct that. If you look at turrets, if you look at weapons on ships, the ships are organic. If you put if you would make them 100% compatible with normal technology, this just would look very ugly. And I mean, we know because we had that for a while when we were developing it as a filler, and it really is not nice. So it was a lot of work also in that regard, that you have to make not just new ships, all of the assets have to be redone, and yeah, that's quite a lot.
So I haven't heard the answer. Are they compatible? Can I put Boron engines on Argon ships?
No, you can't.
Oh,
And
okay.
and more importantly, vice versa. They have new weapons, they have new tech engines, and they are different, and they have unique weapons, and that's of course cool. Um, the main reason for this being that it's visually not making sense. You have organic weapons, you have organic engines. They would look ugly on other ships, but yeah.
Okay. And talking about ships, there are also stations, and especially the Boron economy is the thing that drives people. The fact that we already had a completely different economy with the Terran protectorate.
Mhm.
How is the economy with the Borons? Are they using vanilla materials? Because, like for example, the Everest sectors, they were disconnected from the network for a long time now. For us, I mean, um, how does the economy look like?
Similar to the other races, in that they not as different as the Terran economy, because that is a bigger variation, I would say. They have their own food products, of course. Of course, they still eat bofu, and so they need their own farms and their own unique food production. But the rest of the tech tree is like with the other races, identical. But as you can see, they have very unique living sections, docks, storages. All of this are new modules just for the Boron, and all of this looks very organic and very cool.
Yeah, just as we saw on screen, the new cockpits.
Mhm.
Again, back to the graphics and physics, but this time talking about the new DLC about Kingdom End. Will you create the new assets that you have to create different content than before? Talking about missions, of course, you just said something about interiors, but does it enable you to do other things that you did before?
You mean X-Tech 5
Yes.
in terms of missions? Well, missions are not so much part of this base. I mean, it's really when we talk about X-Tech 5, that's really the lowest level. It's like uh, the the base that everything else stands on. So something like missions is pretty much at the top end of the game engine. And so we are always improving that. So there's always, with every new expansion, with every new major update, there are changes with the generic missions. And of course, there is a new plot in the Boron expansion. And that is so there are changes all through the board throughout the entire game, from the base up to the top. But of course, when you get a new expansion, it's not just a lot of cool assets like ships and stations, but also, and that's very important, a cool story that goes with it. It's not so, yeah, it's a different story. It's not as conflict driven, I would say, because it suits the Boron better to be more cooperative, I would say. So this is a different twist, but really cool, very nice. I like it very much. Currently testing, and I think the team did a great job.
I hope so. Like, shout out to the team, by the way, behind you. You know, there are a lot of people working behind the scenes. We usually only see the few faces that we know, and some of them in chat. There are a few of them. Hi to you. Borons as a friendly species, but what about non-friendly encounters in the DLC? We always had like these two-sided stories. Like there was always like one path you could go, but there was also a different path. Like for example, also like we always had like two storylines to follow, right? And I can see one going very characteristic for the Borons, and I'm hoping maybe for some that's a little bit more driven with non-friendly encounters. Are we going to see something there?
Well, of course, I mean, if I say this is a cooperative story, it doesn't mean that it is not, that it is just happy talking to a couple of people and that's it. Of course, there are some dangers and some threats in it as well. It's just not about conflict and war, like something that fits better to a race like the Split, for example, which are a bit more aggressive than the Boron, I would say. But yeah, the game. I think I'm not saying too much if I say that already. Will have two game starts, so there is something that you unlock later. There is one major story, one new game start, which we uh, really suggest people to try out newly. So even if you have a safe game, of course, I know, especially those of you who played for hundreds or thousands of hours already, you always want to continue, and you can do that, and you can, of course, also play the new or most part of the new story with your existing save game. I would still encourage you to try out a new game start, and this one is one that we really feel strongly about as a suggestion to make the most popular one. Is the main, or there is also, of course, the other type of audience, the other extreme from people who played hundreds of hours, those that buy the game newly now. And as I said, we focus a little bit on relaunching the game as a complete universe with the full community of planets now. And so for those people, I think especially this game start is the way to go, because it not just brings this new story introducing the Boron, but it also kind of connects a little bit with all of the other plots. I mean, if you really have the complete edition, or well, it will have a slightly different name, but the complete game with all of the expansions, then there's an awful lot of content now. Every expansion brought stories. We always also improved the missions and plot of the base game. So there's really a lot of little elements, lots of pieces of a larger puzzle of stories that you can potentially play in this universe. And we tried to increase the chance that the player sees all of it. And it's of course always depending very much on where you go and what you do and how you develop, how quickly do you get rich, are you what type of a player are you? Do you go more in the economic direction, more in the aggressive military build my empire direction? That influences also which plot lines make sense, or which things you run into first. But yeah, we want to really encourage players to start from scratch with this game start and enjoy the story.
Very nice. You said last week in the German interview, and today also a few times, that the galaxy will be now complete in your view, but you don't stop working on X4, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's an important distinguishment. I mean, it's I want to make sure that people know that this game is not this is not the end of the line. We are still working on X4. We will continue to work on X4. There is more to come. I know you guys know already a little bit about the ventures, but there will also be something beyond the ventures. So we are not done with X4 yet. But this is still the yeah, it's a different thing. We are working. We will continue to work on X4. I cannot say exactly which direction. It's also very early. We cannot really talk about this yet because we really don't know the details yet. But it will not be another major faction. This is the universe with its major factions, and I think that's what many people waited for, that they have the full universe with all of the big factions in it.
You were saying yourself something about the ventures. You are still working on it, right? And we know that last year you already started with some play testing in-house with some people. What happened? Like, are people just unsatisfied with how it was, or are you unsatisfied with how it felt? What's hindering you, and how's the current status?
It's a really big thing. It's a major step to make an online element, to bring an online element into a single player game. And the way you do this, the goals are very high, right? I mean, we want to get people to socially interact with each other, invite friends, play some stuff together. It has to work with all of the different save games. It should be fun. So yeah, there's a lot to do. And we had some new version. I mean, you know that the thing that we released publicly already, I think relatively early after the release, I think it was even in late 2018, was just simple ventures. So that was the base technology, just the ability to send some of your ships once you unlocked this gameplay feature by building the headquarter and extending it with these venture modules. To send some of your ships into other universes. So that was available, and I think a lot of people tested it. This gave you some rewards. It means that everybody can see visitors in their universe if you enable it. So you see ships potentially of your friends, potentially of people that you don't know, traveling through your universe. They are specially marked, and you can interact with them. But this is an asynchronous multiplayer, right? So this is not a individual playing live in your universe, because everybody still has their own universe. You have your universe on your machine, and that's the big thing. It's actually an important fact that I always have to remind people of, that even though everybody's playing X4 like an MMO, because you invest hundreds, if not thousands of hours in this universe, you develop it, you have all of these NPCs that are completely simulated, not just the stuff around you that you see. All of the universe is completely simulated, but all of that is happening on your machine. This is a type of a game that people are normally only used to in an MMO, because then you have this big machine somewhere on the internet, some data center driven thing where you are running the universe, and then your client is always just in charge of rendering something. In our game, your machine is doing both. It's running the universe, and it's rendering your particular part of the universe. And that's something to wrap your head around. But it also leads to, when we do this kind of multiplayer, it is automatically it automatically leads to this law of the multiverse. Every player's universe is kind of one universe of a multiverse of many different universes. So that's why the ventures fit so nicely. You send your ships to other universes, they visit each other, they can interact with each other, and then yeah, the challenge was really what kind of cooperation and also conflict makes sense there, and how deeply do you connect it with what's going on in your universe. We want to make sure that it doesn't mess up your universe too much. So it shouldn't be an all-out war where suddenly one player can send a huge fleet into other universes and wipes out something. So people can join this activity without fear, without having to worry about the consequences too much. But of course, we also want to encourage players to do it in the first place. So there has to be some reward. What are you getting out of it? So we want to have some unique new assets, some new ships in this case, of course, that you can only get that way. And I think a big part of that is, of course, that we have now, once this is being released, and I think the way we are going to release it is in the form of a beta, hopefully not too long after Kingdom End and 6.0. We have this online inventory, and that's a big thing, that you have persistent objects that right? I mean, normally everything in your game is connected to your save game. Everything you do is one save game thread, you can say, and then you can save it, and then you can start again, and then you have a completely different universe and a completely different thread. But what we are doing with online ventures is, in parallel, you have, as a user with one account, an online inventory that you can connect to all of your save games. And so if you have something there, this is persistent. This can persist even a new game start. And you will have to unlock the venture technology every time. So you have to build or get the headquarter. You know, you don't build the headquarter, but you find the headquarter.
Oh, spoilers.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, but that's a story. That's a little bit. There's actually many different ways to getting the headquarter, right? Yeah, but then you extend it, and you build especially the venture modules, and so there's a hurdle that you have to get over with every new game start. But once you did that, you have access to this persistent stuff that you can get from ventures.
Does that mean that you will need to have to run servers?
Mm, of course, yeah. This doesn't work without servers. Of course, that was already the case with Ventures 1.0, like we had them in 2018.
Yeah, but that was like, if I remember it right, I just saw a few yellow ships sitting in the universe, not doing anything. But this time we're talking about a
Oh,
little bit more.
yeah. Of course, they should have been doing something, but of course not a terrible lot. At the time, we intentionally, because this was the very first test, when the goal was that they don't mess with much, that they just fly around happily, and especially we wanted to make sure that there was no that there was no conflict really. You even if you destroyed the ships, the visitors to your universe, the other person, the sender, so to speak, would not lose their ship. And this is different when we release the real thing. People who subscribe to it will have to decide which ships they want to send on an online venture, but there is the risk of losing ships. Of course, this is a decision. You can join the whole activity of playing ventures, and then still decide only to send crap ships or no ships at all. But a ship that you send could potentially be lost. So that's an important thing. And yes, the ships will do a lot more than just sitting around in your universe.
Okay, I would love to talk about more about this. But just one very short question. How did the playtesters react? What was their reaction?
Yeah, there was a misunderstanding. We were surprised. We tested it with a increasingly larger group, but it's still a relatively small group at the time. And it was interesting to see that they perceived it a lot more like PvP than we expected. That was the main takeaway. It We didn't see it as PvP. Yes, there was a conflict, and you can subscribe to two different sides, and then there are ventures that are coming out of that are part of a big conflict where people fight against each other. So you are doing these tasks partially in your own universe and partially by playing ventures, which all lead to a big multiverse war, so to speak. But it's since it's not a direct interaction, you are not going into these other universes, you are not live playing against another player. We thought, this isn't PvP, right? But the people that were playing it actually saw it as PvP, and that was something that surprised us, and that led to requirements, and also one of it was, for example, the requirement or the request by those testers that they wanted to be able to talk to each other more. We didn't have a chat, for example, at the time. And that's one of the things that we added now, or that we are adding. I shouldn't say that it's not finished yet. We hope to be able to get into a beta after the release of Kingdom End, hopefully soon after, because it would be cool that when people are picking up the game with 6.0 and Kingdom End, that soon after they can also join this and play it with their friend, and invite people. That's the idea. We hope that we are capable of doing that.
Okay, so we're talking about like July, August, right?
I don't nail me down to months or anything for both the release of Kingdom and or the ventures. I don't know really. I hope a bit sooner, but I don't know.
I tried to. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. I tried to. There, you said that there's like there is how did you describe it? There's a threat to that, but there's also another threat that I want to talk about, and I need to elaborate a little bit more on this, because it's about a few weeks or months ago that on this channel, Captain Collins, I've released a video talking about an existential crisis, we called it. That was an idea that grew in chat about like how can we make the game a bit more interesting when you did all the quests and you're like left on your own and there is not too much going on at the moment because we don't have like the dynamic diplomacy going on. Like we have these borders where the factions go expand to, but they're not expanded. Like there's to for new players. One faction cannot take the entire galaxy. This is like prevented by your side, right?
Well, yeah, there is a lot of logic on the high level to keep factions within some controlled borders. They have there's a lot of freedom, and I think people don't realize how deep the whole simulation goes. I mean, the fact that most people that are new to the X game are often very surprised by the fact that we are actually even simulating all of those thousands of ships that are flying around, and that all of this activity is an actual part of a really simulated economy. I mean, nothing that is being manufactured comes out of thin air normally, and that is really unusual for a single player game. Yeah,
Okay.
you are getting to the end game, right? You are
Exactly.
asking, and I saw that video. So
Yeah.
really,
Maybe
really,
one more word before
yeah.
you start. An existential crisis. Some other people maybe call this an end game crisis. We already talked about this. X4 is really hard to describe when your end game starts because it's very individual. Some
Mhm.
people say it starts after finishing all the quests. Some people say when I have 1,000 battleships. It's very individual. And
Yeah.
you said you discussed this internally. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah. The idea to in general, this is of course always a big topic. How much special content for this late game, end game do we add? This is of course controversial because you always wonder how many people even reach this point. We have such a wide base of players. And as you say yourself, everybody plays differently. Some people play maybe an hour a day, others play the whole day and weeks on end. Very different play styles. Is it are you just more interested in building your economy? Are you interested in making big wars? So it's pretty clear what early game defines when you are really struggling for your second ship, your third ship, when you start building up your economy with a little bit of mining here and there and a little bit of trading here and there. But then it diverts very quickly, and people develop into very different types of players and games later on. And then of course, if we as developers add something that is only intended for players after hundreds of hours, say, then it's it's a question. How much can we do there, and how can we make it in a way that it really works for as many as possible of those people that get to that point, because they are so different. And how interested are they in a conflict as opposed to just peacefully trading and so on. So this is always in the back of our minds. And one thing that we did in this area was a couple of years ago terraforming. As you know, that's a definite end game activity that we added, which is a little bit less controversial than a big end game crisis, as you call it. But this end game or no, you didn't call it endgame crisis, right?
Exactly.
Existential
Because of the
crisis.
end
Yeah,
game
yeah, yeah, yeah.
individualizing. Yeah.
It's an important to distinguish. Yes, but yeah, the idea to have a existential crisis, a big crisis with a conflict, with a big conflict that the player faces, was there early on already. We discussed this oftentimes, but it is dangerous, of course. And if we do it, we have to do it right. We have to allow players to choose if they want to participate or not. But on the other hand, it might not be too far away from what we are already doing with the big wars between factions, right? So currently, there are a couple of conflicts that are always ongoing in the universe, which is basically our sink for the whole economy. This is where a lot of stuff is going, ultimately, the wars between factions. They are building ships and they are burning them in their wars. And but exactly those wars could, in a similar way, then turn against the player. And this is fascinating. This is something I definitely would like to do in the future. It's not yet in, but I definitely like your suggestion there, and this kind of your video there also reminded us of this discussion, and we might be doing something in this direction in the future.
And just recently, I'm playing also modded for the first time for a long time, and I just recently stumbled over Rise of the Ocean Raider, which had a very interesting concept of starting and adjusting the difficulty in game through an NPC that you could talk to, and that way you could even during their campaign change the
Mhm.
difficulty. That was a very interesting concept. Maybe you want to take a look at that, or
Okay.
ask your team if they have
Yeah.
some experience with it, because that was I discovered that after the video of the existential crisis, and it was going into the direction that could work. It just as a friendly note to for
Mm.
you. Maybe
Interesting. Yeah. This is. I think this goes the way you are describing it. At least sounds like the way I would want it to be. Because if there's anything optional, what I really don't like is that it is presented as an option, right? Like as if it is a game option, because that kind of takes you out of the world. So when I say it is optional, then it is in-game optional, like a conversation with a person in the universe that changes the events. That's in game, but not a game option changes war turned on, war turned off. That would be ugly.
exactly. Before we start with the Q&A section, one last reminder for the Twitch chat. You can add TMLG_Dutch, which is our moderator, and he will forward your questions if they're not already being answered. One more thing that I want to know from you personally is, how does it feel to still run your company and produce games you're passionate about? And very important, another on top question: was there a time you had the chance to take a different path?
The chance makes it sound like it.
No, it's not like
No.
it's a bad thing to have it, but
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
was there a different path in sight?
Definitely, sure. There's always our life. Every day you make choices which can change your life. No, but your first question is, how does it feel? Great. Yeah, I like it. I love it. I really enjoy making these games, and I enjoy being now part of a bigger and bigger team. Seeing the company grow, being able to do that economically, that's a great fortune. I consider myself very lucky. And this is, of course, I think I said this before. The reason why I appreciate working on a single game series for such a long time is probably because I was already in the industry for quite a number of years before we had this luck, before we started the X series. So we had enough failures and economic struggles and games that were not so successful before. So I learned to appreciate how cool it is to have a game that is played and loved by many and is big enough to stand economically on its own, and be able to do that is really great, and I really appreciate it. Yeah, there were of course many paths before I personally even started my own company, but also afterwards, of course. There were many events in the last 20, almost 30 years now, where all of Egosoft could have very easily ceased to exist. We were very lucky many times to make it. This is survivor bias, right? There's on one company that survives, there are unfortunately many others that don't make it. So it's always a struggle. But yeah, I'm really happy.
Great. Okay, Q&A. These questions are not from me. We take a few from YouTube, and we're taking a few from Twitch. All right, let's start with one from YouTube, from Dean Cripps. What features or balance changes are held back by the safe game compatibility requirement?
That's to go into detail, I would have to really ask the team, but it is anything that changes. One example is, of course, a change in the map and in the universe is always, it's not impossible, but it's hard. Every time we do that, every time something in the universe changes, we have to write special code that fixes this in existing save games, right? I mean, imagine we remove a gate, for example. That would be pretty terrible, and we would have to go through existing save games and change it, and adding something even in a fixed location in an existing sector is hard, because maybe the player has built a station there. So that's one area of problems, but it's fixable and it's doable, but it's hard. It costs us extra work to maintain safe game compatibility. The same is true with assets in general. When you change existing ships, for example, these same ships already exist in live save games. So you might have done, say we are adding turrets to a ship. Like say we decide this particular ship had 6 turrets, now it should have 7 turrets or whatever. Okay, maybe that would even be possible, because but worse if you remove it, right? Then the existing save games might have something mounted that the player manually installed into that turret. So what's happening with that? How do you fix that? It's always dangerous, and this is just one example. Any change to assets has to be thought through, and it's not necessarily so much things that are completely impossible, but many things that are dangerous because of potential bugs, and labor intensive because we have to write special code for many cases.
Okay, thank you. That answers Zinder's question too. The next one from Sniper NLN. Sorry. Is there a chance of getting dynamic diplomacy in X4, so factions could change their allies or enemies depending on what's happening in your game? And that question came a lot. I was just waiting until someone wrote a good question for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about this a little bit already years ago. This is like always it's interesting, and it was theoretically possible because the whole faction logic is dynamic and it is able to react to live events. And but on the other hand, as I said, with the example of the existential crisis, I would not like to have in-game options that say, okay, Argon are no friend to Split or whatever. It would have to be presented in-game, lore-wise, believably. So we are very careful with that, and the only way we did this or similar things in X4 so far, as you know, is through storylines. Without spoiling anything, there are stories that lead to diplomatic changes. But I think what he's referring to is probably more like a more general solution, like it is in the X3, the latest X3 Farnham's Legacy game. So we've discussed this obviously, but no, there's no plan for it.
Okay. Next one. Ablaze666 from YouTube asked, how does the current state of the game compare to the vision the team had in mind back in the day when they planned X4 on the drawing board? Have they achieved what they aimed for?
I think so. I think so, yeah. I mean, there's of course a lot of things that you add over the years, but if you talk about vision and you talk about the foundation, and I think, yeah, there's these big things that the big goal I think was already obvious even before we worked on X Rebirth, and I said it before. X Rebirth was like a milestone on the way to X4, because X4 in its final form was so big for us that we couldn't really do it. We first, yeah, as I said, X4 when it came out had to have a smaller universe, and without all of the without the full community of planets, but also when it came out, it was a lot more sandboxy with a lot less story. And then, as if you go further back in time, you have Rebirth, which had, of course, the big, which is a great game still. I don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's. I know this is a controversial topic though, because some people hate it, some people love it. It's different, and one of the differences was that you can only fly one ship, and that was one of the big visions, that we want to be able to have this first-person experience, walking around, directly walking from one ship to another, over a station, having a ship dock on another ship, stepping out of it, climbing down a ladder. That's the big vision, which we now have achieved for a huge amount of different ships. And being able to, and then the other part that I think we now achieved is having a single game that leads you from on the one hand, this first-person experience that I just described, where you have one ship and you walk around and you are that person, you see everything in first person, and then slowly leads you into this, if you want it, large empire management, where you have the map and you can control and you give commands and you can build stations and command fleets. So that was the other big vision, and yes, I think we've achieved that. So I'm pretty happy with it.
And every time you want, you can go back and fly a small one, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, teleportation is important for that. I think that cannot be underestimated. There's always, again, I'm sure there are some people out there in the community that hate it, and I know there's always some people that call for a jump drive, that you're more capable of moving ships around more quickly. But this decision to not have jump drives, but have travel drive, for example, for faster traveling, and teleportation that allows you as a player to move around quickly to all of your different ships. Your ships cannot just jump anywhere, but you can jump to those ships. That I think was a very good decision in retrospect, and this is part of the early vision, and because it connects so nicely, this late game where you manage and have a large empire with this first-person perspective.
Yeah, and we can not only jump ships, we can also jump questions. Because there was one. Exactly, because you can let your ships jump around, but with a mod. And that leads me to the next question from me, which I had saved. You mentioned that mods could get labeled safe in the future without
Yes.
changing it to being modified.
Yes.
What
Yeah.
kind of mods do you think of there? Not what mod exactly, but what kind of mods?
Yeah. We actually are looking into selection of mods. We have, as you know, a couple of modders that work for us now that are became part of the team, and so we are working with them to look at a collection of mods that are candidates, and the most likely ones are, of course, quality of life things. Anything that doesn't change the balancing of the game, that doesn't make the game easier, because I mean, the idea is between modded and unmodded is that an unmodded game, you should have the guarantee that you are playing fair. And that is also your ticket to be able to join this online venture thing, the multiverse. Because one part of it is that you compare yourself with others, you compete with them even. You can publish your results, you have bragging rights. And I mean, at the moment you open the door there to mods that change the balancing, would make that useless, right? I mean, just saying, oh, I have this big universe with hundreds of ships. If you cheated the money, if you or those made it somehow much easier to get to those ships, that would not make sense. And it's not just the comparison; it's also when you send ships to other players for mods. For ventures, you have to make sure that they are compatible with each other. So we have to really rely on technical specifications, and we cannot allow most of the content mods that change the universe, that add ships to the universe, for example, because we couldn't be sure if somebody has this added ship and sends it on a venture, what happens on the other side. So these mods we definitely want to continue to support, as I said, especially with the Blender tools. That's especially for these kind of mods. But these mods will never be signed. So go ahead, play them, and then of course you still have the ability to switch. Right? You can have one branch of save games where you play a heavily modded universe that is then marked as modified, and then turn them off. You have the extensions menu, turn them off, and have a second branch, your uncheated universe, so to speak, where you maybe still have some mods, but they are the signed ones with quality of life things, menu improvements, stuff like that. So we have a couple of candidates for this, and we really hope that we can get this done before the ventures release, because the ventures will be an important milestone there, because they will make a difference.
For new players, really be aware that once your game save is modified, you cannot change it back to not being modified anymore, right? This
Yes.
is
Yeah.
very, very special. Like, if you want to change it to a modded game, be sure to save it before you mod it, and then go into the modded
Yes.
save.
Yes. Back up your saves. The same like with beta testing. Back up your save games. Always look for this modding message. I think we made sure now that the moment this state changes, you get the information. There's a box that appears. Now your game is modded and modified, and I think that's important, because sometimes it can also happen unintentionally, because this whole process of distinguishing between modded and unmodded is technically quite complicated. It has to do with digital signatures for all the files that we create. So we sign them, we make sure this is the unmodified original, and our game has to check for that. And whenever you go into a save game theoretically you can edit save games, right? And that's fine, but you're cheating. And then we have to detect that, and then it's modified. That all has to do with this signature process. And I just had a problem last week where a tester was reporting that that suddenly, without him installing a mod, he got the message, your game is modified. And in that case, it turned out it was Steam that somehow messed up the update of the new beta. So that was the moment when beta 4 of 6.0 came out, and suddenly his game was modified. So sometimes in rare cases, this can happen, that Steam didn't patch the files correctly, and so be aware of that and look at these messages.
Yep, happened to me too. Okay, next question. Back to the Borons. Tibor asks, so does this Boron exclusivity We're back to the stations for this question. Apply to the stations too, or can I still add new boron station parts to my existing stations?
Yes, the later. Yeah, you can. Station modularity is fully compatible. You can connect everything to anything. Of course, visually it looks nicer if you try to stay within, especially with living sections, storages. I think production components are different because they are very technical anyway, right? I mean, the melting down of rocks, there is no boron variation of the production module anyway, so they have to be compatible. The only thing that is not compatible in terms of connecting is the venture modules. There is, I think, one connector where that connects on the one side to any module on your station, and on the other side to venture modules. So venture modules cannot be connected anywhere you like. They have to be connected to the venture bridge, so to speak. But other than that, I think everything is compatible.
Okay, great. Zero FX asked in Twitch, any details on the new music for the Boron DLC by LXA? Can we get, like, will it be available maybe before the DLC or something? Or
I hope so. I'm not sure. Dates again, don't ask me, but it's awesome, and there will be a soundtrack, of course, and I hope it will be available a little bit earlier, but I'm not sure.
Oh, that was it. Oh, okay. Wait, I'm still reading. Oh yeah, there's a question from Hawk, and I have one on top of that. So Hawk is asking, are you considering to implement the live stream feature as a smaller window to the map view? Since most of the time you spend on the map view, and it would be nice to see the beauty of X4 always.
Yeah, that's the idea with the live view, that it allows you to see the beauty of the universe and see really firsthand that all of this stuff is really simulated, right? What I was talking about before, that people don't realize that all of that universe really exists, that all of those ships are really flying around, and live view really, the live stream really gives you the ability to see this in a nice way, and even have the camera automatically switch between objects. I want it to be connected with the map functionally, so you can switch between the live stream view and the map quickly. So you have I think you already have the context menu option to go to live stream, but also backwards once you are in the live stream and maybe have changed what object you see there, that you can from there switch back to the map and have that object that you just saw selected on the map. A little window in the corner of the map, I think, will be problematic because, yeah, user interface design, we already have so many things on the map. The map is the most critical anyway. You have the left pane, the right pane, you have at the top and the bottom. Where could you show something? It's really pretty cramped on the map. But I think it's more important that you functionally are able to switch between those two and then use live stream to actually manage things, right? You like imagine just being the rich manager who's sitting in his office
In the Astrid.
yeah, or in the Astrid, yeah, the even more rich, and then just turns on that mode, browses through his universe, and then sees, oh, there's a conflict going on. Okay, there I teleport myself there, or there's what ship is this? Why is it docking at that weird station? And then you just go to the map and change the commands. And so yeah, that's the idea with it.
My question on top would be: is it? Did you try it? Is it hard for the system to have maybe a live view camera in the world, as, like, for example, a news feed? Like at the moment, you have all these ad signs on stations. You could possibly have a live view camera on one of those screens. Have you tried
Uh,
that? How bad would that be impacting your system?
you mean in performance
Yeah,
terms?
exactly.
Yeah, bad, I guess. I mean, it
Oh.
depends. It depends really on your machine, on the situation. Station running around on a platform, you may have noticed, is already now sometimes one of the lower performance situations in X4. Totally depends on the station, not just how complex it is, but how busy it is. Like the worst is probably a station with a lot of docks that is very economically active, like a big shipyard. Worst case, a shipyard that's also a factory that produces all its wares itself and has freighters docking, undocking all the time. So like it's easily possible to have like many dozens of ships that are currently live docking and undocking on the station. That's a lot of physical calculations, a lot of pathing calculations. And on top of that, the rendering of the complex station. And on top of that, the rendering of the characters walking around on the station. And on top of that, the calculations for the big universe that are going on in the background. So, yeah, that adds up. And then you have on top of that the little window just to show you, look, there's a little ship flying around. So, yeah, it would probably stress out the hardware even more.
Okay. One thing that is at the moment missing in the live view, I don't know if you're aware, is collision and sometimes even damage.
Very aware, yes.
Is that coming?
That is Yes,
Okay.
that was one of the big. It was actually, we were not sure if we can do it, and I don't want to promise that we can 100% do it, because it basically means that we have complete physics simulation in two different spaces at the same time, which is something the engine wasn't able to do so far. Obviously, people, I think those that play X4 for a little longer know there is, of course, some performance optimizations going on for all those thousands of other ships that you are not seeing live around you. They are being simulated. They are completely real in any economic sense. They are simulated, as I say, bottom up. Everything in the universe does something important, but they do not have physical collisions, for example, because those are very there's a different league of performance necessary to do that, and also in terms of pathing, how exactly, how precise the pathing calculations are happening. And yes, this new camera mode basically shows you now not one place where you are, but two places at the same time. We cannot just turn off physics and collisions and all of that for wherever the player is currently, because he might be flying through an asteroid himself and we want to detect that, or something is attacking him and we want to detect that he's being shot at. There's physics simulation there needed, but also in whatever you are seeing. And that wasn't possible so far. And but I'm pretty optimistic now that we will have it. With that is, but I cannot 100% promise it.
Okay. We have one question from chat from Bolt Thrower 1980. He's asking, will there be terraforming in the DLC regions? Like, and on top of that, he said Mars terraforming would be awesome.
I read that before. I saw your stream. Yes, there is a new terraforming mission, and it will be in the DLC region. Yes, Mars. Can you imagine the Terrans allowing somebody strange to terraform Mars? You know how paranoid they are about anything happening in the solar system, but Mars, of all places, I know that wouldn't work in the lore. But yes, there is a new terraforming project, and it's happening in the DLC section.
I mean, if you fly fast enough through the gate, they don't care anymore. So
Yeah, but terraforming, I think, is a little bit different, right? You start changing the entire planet. Next, you start terraforming with different goals, Earth. And I think that's exactly what they are so afraid of.
teleporting your HQ near Earth. Yeah, I mean, it's fine. Okay. I think there's one question. I don't know if you can answer that, but Paul Shakur is asking, can live stream camera be somehow used to show major ventures results in the future?
Oh my God! Imagine this is the game. The venture is means what he means, I guess, is your ship is visiting other players' universes, and to show this live would mean, first of all, the other player has to have its PC turned on, right? Ventures are asynchronous also in they can take much longer than just the normal play session time, right? You are sending a ship on a venture for a whole day. Maybe this ship is visiting not one player but multiple players. It's going from one universe to another, and some players are playing while you are playing. Other players are playing 5 hours later, and so it isn't easy to just get information. It's impossible actually to get that information live whenever you want to see it. But we are thinking of other cool things that we could do with this. So yeah, there is stuff that we could do. It would be super cool to have more direct influence over what ventures do, what venture ships are doing while you are playing and while you are not playing. But it is not in the form of directly rendered 3D sectors. That wouldn't work. Not without an MMO that is more traditional running on a server. And I don't think that would be an X game.
Yeah, having like all the information, like it's not only where the ships are, but what are they doing? What did they do? Maybe like a what's that? A rewind feature, but then you would need to track everything that's happening for all the time, right? So that you could take a
In the worst
playback, for
case,
example.
in the worst case, you need the entire save game of every player that you have visited. Like your ship goes through 5 different universes, other player universes on its trip. And every time you have a save game, you know how big our save games are, right? Hundreds of megabytes. So hundreds of megabytes of data potentially that may or may not be relevant for what you want to see. Yeah, good luck with that. It's not an MMO where you have one central universe where everybody is together. But I think that's also the strength of X4, that we are not a single MMO, because the game would be very different if it would be, right? I've talked about that before. You wouldn't be able to become so powerful and develop in a relatively doable time from a single ship to a large fleet in any MMO.
Exactly. So we are almost up. We're almost done with our time. I just like to close this a little bit. Shulo and Kurti are two modders which are extremely well known in the community for their mods. How do they fit in your company? How do you work with them?
Great, they are great guys. We work on all kinds of things. Of course, a bit different what type of tasks they are working on, but they are getting more integrated into the team every day. And yeah, as I said, not just with these two guys, a couple of other new additions to the team in the last year. We were growing quite a lot recently, and that's really exciting. We've a lot of cool talents on the team now, and it's really great to work with these guys.
So there is definitely some promising future for X5. Good. Yeah.
There's always more. There's
Yeah,
always more. Yeah,
exactly.
of course. I mean, but
exactly. So I can only say thank you very much, Bernd, for taking your time and talking with us about the upcoming changes, patch 6.0 and Kingdom End and Ventures. There's a lot coming. There's still a lot going on. Is there anything I forgot to ask? Is there anything that you want to tell us that you want to address directly to the community?
ooh,
This is like, I
I
didn't
don't.
prepare him for that, so.
Yeah, I made a couple of notes before. I don't know. Probably there's a lot. I don't know, but it's no. It was great talking to you, and thank you very much for having me on the stream. It's really nice, and I hope that you guys enjoy the game once it's out, and maybe already enjoy the beta now.
Great. Thank you very much, Bernd. Everyone, also thank you very much for watching. Bernd, please stay a little bit. I'll be here with you in a second. Thank you so much for everyone being here. It was a great time, and I hope we answered a lot of your questions. And let's just wait for the future of what's coming, and we can't wait anymore. So again,
Cool.
I don't know to say anything else. Then thank you very much, Bernd. Your last words, and then we're going out of here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you. See ya.